So Joe Santos from Queens, New York, originally, now in Tampa. Go ahead.
Joe, absolute pleasure. Thank you for doing this. I know you're a busy guy, so I don't want to hold you up too much. So my first question is, what did you do before tech?
Well, I pretty much did everything, man. I went through stages of, I was doing music. I went through stages of working, the same BS jobs that, everybody else does, warehouse, retail, supermarkets, all type of jobs, whatever was paying, I would do it out of mind. As long as it was legal, I'm good. I would definitely do it.
That's a good, yeah, definitely want to have that. So why tech?
Um, Basically, I always been interested in technology. I think from early stages. My first website was at the age of 14 years old back in 2000. I did a website for Dragon Ball Z back then. And, back then there wasn't no YouTube, or you can't just go somewhere and find all of the, videos or the movies for Dragon Ball Z. So I was like super young. I was like, man, wouldn't it be cool if I had a website where I recorded all of the Dragon Ball Z videos, put it up online, and somehow I figure it out by clicking view and source. And then from there, that just opened up this whole world of HTML. And just by looking at other websites, I started copying it. And from there on, I just, started building websites. I left it alone for a long time, for like 10 years, to like the age of 24. And when I realized I wasn't going to be an IT worker, like I hated that. I actually went to school for that. I went to college for it. And I realized, I'm like, man, I don't want to be connecting printers and resetting passwords all day, So from there, one day I was at a Starbucks, and then in that Starbucks, I'm seeing this young dude in there, and I see him all the time. And I ask him, "Hey man, what do you do?" He's like, "Well, I'm a programmer. I make applications for your iPhones and things like that, and I work from home. When I'm bored at home, I just come here to Starbucks, and from there, just code here." I'm like, "Damn, that would be cool." Like, I didn't think that people really did that, and because there's things that people think it's like a dream. It's like, oh, you could work from anywhere. It's like, that's not real. When you're living in the world of the real world of like working 9 to 5, like this doesn't seem real. So when he told me that, then from there I went back home and I was like, oh man, I got to look into this. And, here I am, almost 8 years later. Right. So,
You
yeah.
know, you know why that's so important to me? I remember when I was learning how to code and I'd meet programmers and they're like, yeah, I work from home. And, I go to these co-op meetups where it's all of us. We just decide to work in one building, all of our friends. And I'm like, that's not real life. For me, real life is I have to go into a retail environment and bust my butt to make money. You can't tell me you can go drink coffee and joke around with your friends all day and still make money. So that's a great point. What was one of your hardest challenges coming into tech?
Um, I think the hardest challenge was for me. I always felt like people are judging me before they even get to know the skills that I have. Right, like somebody who could come in, I will go to an interview, and it will say, okay, this kid went to LaGuardia Community College and went to City Tech, another city school, right, and they'll look at that, and then from, of course, my appearance, I come in there with a certain swagger, like, hey, how you guys doing, comfortable, right? But at the same time, that also, I feel like it was a challenge in the sense to make people understand, like, yeah, I'm not the typical developer, but I know my stuff, you know what I mean? So that was something that I always felt like that's the challenge that I always still have even to this day, you know?
So that leads me into my next question. As a minority, what struggles have you faced in this industry? How have you tried to overcome them?
Well, I mean, I would say when it comes to like the struggles, it's usually more of, sometimes like what I would say, people might not know the skills that you have, or they overlook your skills and say, you know what? I always think about it. It's not really more like racism or anything like that. It's always like who you're comfortable with, right? Like you could go to a job interview and here comes little Pedro, and Pedro comes into the job interview Pedro might not come from the same background as you. Do you feel comfortable having him there on the team? Will he be able to have the same, skills as the other guy that you might know from high school, or the guy that you might relate to more? He's like, oh, he's from your neighborhood, or he's somebody that you might know from another group, another meetup group, or something like that, right? So for me, it was always that challenge of like, okay, in the struggle of like, all right, I gotta go to the job interview. I gotta be extremely, articulate and be almost perfect. It's what I call the Obama effect, where you have to be Obama to get the job. You can't slack, you can't mess up, and you can't do anything. You always have to be top notch. If not, you might not get the opportunity. So that's like something that I always saw in the industry, as far as like, little struggles here and there, and things like where people might, even though you might be a big part of the team, nobody really acknowledges that you are a huge part of the team. And sometimes you have to have other people that speak up for you, because like, let's say, for example, there was companies that I used to work for where I had ideas, but if I say it, they won't be heard. If somebody else says it, I have to pretty much tell them, hey man, you should go up there, tell them this idea, or we should do this and that. Like, and then when they do it, it gets passed. When I say it's like, oh, we'll see, maybe on the next time, maybe we should try something else, or you get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
it
too
has to be
clear.
yeah. Yeah. So those are the situations that you got to go through, but I always, I push through anything, I don't care. You could put a mountain in front of me. I'm gonna go over it to get to the goals that I need to get to. So I don't really, I don't care, I always just keep moving.
That's phenomenal. What would be a piece of advice you could offer to help others to be more welcoming of people of color?
What I would say is, don't judge a book by its cover, right? That's something that I always remember from like 5th grade, 6th grade. Teachers tell you that don't, the book cover, it might not look so great to you, but inside of it is interesting. It's a huge story. It's gonna give you value, right? And that's something that we could bring into this community too. Like, hey man, I know a lot of people that is in this industry. This is like the standard. You might see Caucasian guy, Indian guy, and an Asian guy, East Asian, and that's it. Like, those are the guys that people be like, well, he got to be good in math. He got to be good in engineering. He got to be this and that. But then when you see the black kid, the Spanish kid, don't think that they might not have the same knowledge as somebody else, right? You just have to be more welcoming and understand that this industry is changing. This world where, I used to always say this, the world of guys playing Dungeons and Dragons and then Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and that's your group. Those days is over. Everybody can code. Anybody can get into this industry, right? It could be the jock. It could be the kid who likes hip hop. It could be the guy that's in the gym all day. This could be the girl. It could be, at the end of the day, is what they have here, right? It's not really about how they look, where they're coming from. It's like, can they bring value to the team, right? If everybody thinks about that, then everything's going to be good, because at the end of the day, when somebody writes some code or a line of code or a program, nobody knows who wrote it and how that person looks or what they have. What you see there is the execution and the solution. That's it.
Wow, I love that so much. And so I know you have an amazing YouTube channel. You have courses that you put out. What is something that you're still trying to achieve in tech right now? What are you trying to have happen?
Right now, I have codingphase.com, right? I recently moved from Connecticut, which is pretty much dead unless you're going to New York, right? But pretty much what I'm doing here in Tampa, I moved down here, bought a house, setting up some roots basically. And my next goal is to have like a agency, a development agency, working with small businesses, and at the same time have like a pathway from getting the students and the people that are learning from me to be able to have experience by getting jobs and gigs from the local businesses that I'm gathering up information from here locally. So that's the goal. And I want to do that in every city, where I could have one guy is in New York, another guy is in LA, etc. And then from there, as I see students that are becoming like really good in programming, we could go in and say, okay, this guy's great with JavaScript. We could have him do the JavaScript part for here. And all of this builds up experience. So people don't have to go through that problem of like, I can't get a job because I have no experience. And because I've never gotten a job, I can't get experience. So if we could somehow fix that, then, I'm going to be happy with that. So I'm just trying to do my part in that end.
I love that. So the final question I have for you is, what is a piece of advice that you would give to someone new into the industry or is trying to learn how to code? What would you tell them?
What I would say is, understand that this takes time, right? Everybody has their own timing. I see situations where somebody gets hired in 2 months of just starting to learn how to code. I've seen people that have taken them 9 months, even a year, or even more. Because also, too, you got to remember, not everybody is in the same situation. Not everybody lives in an area where there's a lot of jobs. Not everybody is learning all of the things. Sometimes you got to make those mistakes. So then later on, you could come back and fix them and say, okay, cool. I was learning this technology, right? It's like a guy who lives in an area where there's only .NET jobs, but he's learning Python, right? That's a mistake that you go through. And you're like, okay, I just want to learn Python. Cool. But then now you can't find a job because you didn't learn .NET. You know what I mean? So those are like little mistakes that prolong your journey, and it takes you a little bit longer. A guy that goes in and does the research and says, you know what's in my area? Maybe there's not a big tech hub, but there's a lot of small agencies where I could work at. What do they do? PHP and WordPress. What do they do? Shopify. If I learn those skills, I could get hired right away. So those are like the different factors that people don't take into account. And that's why you might see situations where somebody gets hired in 2 months, another person gets hired in 9 months, right? And at the same time, just know that you can't compare yourself to anybody. What you're good at, somebody else might not be good at, right? There was something that I was watching, I think it was on Twitter, from, I think, Dan Abramoff. He actually made a list of all of the things that he doesn't know. And I was like thinking in my head, I'm like, holy shoot, everything that he doesn't know, I know, right? But this is somebody that I look up to. I'm like, I respect them. You know what I'm saying? So it's so interesting that you think like this person knows everything. It's like, nah, it's like everybody has niches and things that they're really, really good at. Right. So you can't go in there and say, hey, man, well, I'm not so good with PHP, or well, I'm not so good with Ruby. Sometimes, it takes a little bit longer for you, or sometimes your calling is something else, or your interest is something else, so you can't compare yourself to the other guy and his story. It's like you have your own journey.
Joe Santos, coding phase, developer extraordinaire. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Yeah, definitely, man. I really appreciate it, for everybody watching this, thank you for watching. And yeah, you already know, codingphase.com.
There you go. All right.
Hey everybody, my name is Justin E. Samuels. I am the founder and CEO of Render Atlanta, as well as In Streaming Color Telethon, as well as Rebuild Black Business.
Thank you for doing this. And I've been following you for a while, and you're definitely a huge influence on my life right now. And some of the things that you're doing is phenomenal. So I really want to touch base on that. But before we do, let's start at the beginning. What did you do before tech?
So honestly, before tech was in college. So I went to school to do tech. I took the traditional background. Prior to that, I was your typical college student hanging out, partying, all of that.
Awesome. So why tech? Why not any other field? What drew you here?
So to be completely honest, what drew me in was the prospect of making a lot of cash, So let's just be honest. There isn't any other job that I could be 22, 23, 24, pulling in $100,000, $200,000. I'm not saying that I was doing that, but other than being a drug dealer or and investment banker or some other small, like a niche job, you ain't gonna be pulling in that. So when I found tech, it was because one, the cash, and two, back in the old days, I was doing a whole lot of MySpace theming. So I was the person that you would hit up that's like, hey, I want a theme to show off my top eight, and I'm like, okay, I could customize that. Little did I know at the time though, I was doing like CSS, HTML. I wasn't doing no JavaScript at the time. So ultimately, when I walked past a poster at my college, it was like, hey, do you want to make a whole bunch of cash? Do you like tech? I'm like, yeah, of course. I always had uh, a passion towards tech. It was like, well, you should change your major to XYZ. And I said, oh, okay, I'm gonna change it over, and the rest is history, pretty much.
That's awesome. So what was one of your hardest challenges coming into tech?
Hardest challenge would be not getting discouraged. You know what I mean? So I tell the story of persistence all the time about my own trial where I applied for a job every single day until graduation, a whole year out. And I only ever got 5 calls back about, and I only had 3 job offers. Of the 3, I only cared about 2. So to put this into a perspective, I started my senior year at uh, Mississippi State University, and walking into that in June, I said, okay, I'm going to apply for a job every single day I get up. I can't be going out sad without any job. I mean, I got bills to pay. It is time. And I applied for a job every single day. And ultimately, it wasn't until January or like February that I was able to get a phone call back. Got that phone call back. That was my very first job offer. And then my job that I ended up taking, I didn't get an interview for that role until 2 weeks prior to a graduation. And I didn't get the offer until the day prior. So it was like a perfect timing. But the hardest part is staying encouraged the whole time.
You're a serial founder. You've got 3 companies that you're doing amazing things with.
Yeah.
Why don't you touch on that for a moment? What are some of the things that you're doing?
So as we mentioned earlier, I'm the founder and CEO of 3 different businesses. And the one that I'll start off with is the one that I am the most known for, which is Render ATL. So you probably have seen me talk about it. I talk about it any chance I get. I'm always boasting on it. It's my pride and joy. And what we are known for is being the first conference in the South focusing on React, more so the intersection of culture and tech. So that is where we're trying to pull people in that usually don't go to conferences, that usually end up looking like me, a black, but have the swagger where we just don't want a code switch anymore. And our conference is geared towards that type of demographic where we just want you to come, learn from our great speakers, and feel comfortable in your own skin. So I can't tell you all the tricks that we have because the conference, we just announced the updated dates due to COVID, is going to be September 13th through the 15th, 2021. Be clear again, September 13th to the 15th, 2021. And we're going to have a lot of tricks going on and whatnot, and I hope to catch y'all there. It's going to be about 500 people, so it's going to be awesome. But then the other one is in streaming color. That was the one that I began with Paris, aka a Black Tech Twitter queen. Shout out to her. What happened was watching a conference, which I'm not going to name, was doing talks to help raise money for COVID, and they did it over the span of 24 hours. Well, I noticed during this 24-hour time frame that they had 3 tracks, but there was only 2 to 4 speakers of color. So if you do that quick math in your head, that's about 80 something people, 60, 80 something, people. But how do you only have 2 to 4, maybe 5 speakers of color? So I was like, you know what? I could do this and I could do it better. So I had that dream. And then within a day or two, I picked up the phone, called on, parents like, hey, I'm going to do this conference. We're going to do it for we're going to do it for 48 hours. We're going to have speakers going every half an hour. It's going to be turns. We're going to have 3 tracks. We're also doing a job fair too.
Wow.
She says, you is crazy, but I'm down. And it ends up turning into 25 hours. And the reason why the 25, just because I wanted to be cute.
Right.
We could have did 24, but I was like, why do 24? Let's do the extra hour. To make a long story short, we ended up having 40 speakers over the course of 25 hours, streamed it across Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and I aimed for 10,000 attendees. This is why I tell people to always aim high, because if you aim high, you may not hit your goal, but you'll come close. And we ended up having 8,500 people tune in. It was ridiculous,
Wow.
And we also had a job fair going too, which involved Twitter and Shopify, 2 of the most recognizable brands in their respective industry came through and got a ton of talent. So that was awesome. And the last thing is rebuildblackbusiness.com. So that has been my new pride and joy. That thing, let me tell you, I started off of a half an hour quick website that I did using our CMS over at MailChimp. For those who don't know, I'm a senior engineer over at MailChimp too. That's my actual 9 to 5 job. But I built a quick half an hour website to just catalog all of the Black-owned businesses that are out there and the ones that are being hurt. Because I kept seeing all these threads help support this business, help support that business. I'm like, we need to centralize. If you don't centralize, all the help is not going to get to everybody that actually needs it. So I said, hey, I want this done. We need to organize who wants to help me. And I kid you not, we ended up getting 500 people on this open source project. And as of today, we are the biggest aggregator of Black-owned businesses. We have over 14,000 Black-owned businesses in our database. So you could go there to rebuildblackbusiness.com, and you're able to type in your zip code or your city, and you could then find Black-owned businesses by your category that you want to search from. So gone are the days of asking who is the closest Black doctor to me. You could go on our site, type in your zip code, and you could actually see all the Black-owned doctors about you. So just go to rebuildblackbusiness.com and you can check it out. And we're still taking open source contributions too. So
wow. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So that leads me to my next question. As a Black male, what struggles have you faced in this industry and how have you overcome them?
The hardest struggle I have is keeping it to real all the time. Like there's a certain swag or a certain vibe that you give off as a black male. Just to be honest about it, we understand that we're the coolest people in the room, meaning we're not intimidated by other people, but other people are intimidated by us. So what we had to do in the past was do this thing that you may have heard of called code switching. But I promised myself from the very first day, I'm not going to code switch. And for those who don't know what a code switch is, it means you get to your place of employment or anywhere that you are going, and you don't ask who you truly are. And I said, like, nope, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be who I am, unfiltered, unapologetic if I don't need to be, but not going to apologize just for my blackness. And they could take it or leave it. Now, it's gotten me in trouble plenty of times, but ultimately, the people who just enjoy my presence for who I am usually end up winning out and winning out in a big way. So I think my hardest thing was just being a black man in a workplace at times can be challenging just because of who you are.
What would be a piece of advice that you could give someone to be more welcoming and accepting of a person of color?
So the biggest thing is understand that you don't know any. Well, hold on. Can I curse or can I not curse?
I would rather not because of what we're trying to achieve here. Otherwise, I would say go
Okay,
for it. But yeah,
got you. So the biggest thing that I could tell you to be more welcoming to a person of color is understand that you don't know anything about them, and your preconceived notions of them is completely wrong. You may think, oh, I play basketball with my black friends. I go to the movies with my black friends. I am the black person's ambassador. Nothing gets us more angry than that because it's like, hey, you don't really know anything. You think you know, but you actually don't. The thing that makes us feel more invited is when people are like, hey, my name is John. I don't know anything about you. Let's just have a conversation. And your actual skin color or your actual like race doesn't come up the whole time because they're trying to get to know you as a person. But then they make it clear like, hey, I understand that you are a black man or you are a black a woman, and if there's anything that I could do to ever help you, please feel free to reach out to me. That's a true ally because they're like, hey, I'm not going to be like always advocating, saying, hey, I understand that you're black. I will help you all the time. It's like, leave me to be. But if you're like, if you ever need anything, I have an open door policy that goes above and beyond because we don't need to be reminded all the time of the color of our skin. We could like wake up, look in the mirror, and we could tell that we are black, brown, anything else. But just always be there as a shoulder to just cry on.
absolutely. What is a goal of yours that you're trying to accomplish in this industry right now?
The major goal that I'm trying to accomplish is trying to connect people to one another. So that's my main thing is I know pockets of people over here, pockets of people over there, over here, over there, but they all don't overlap all the time. But I have this special gift where I'm able to go between groups and usually not disturb the overall makeup or the functionality of the group. So I'm what they call a connector or a plug is what they call it. I like to plug people in to other groups and help them reach their goals. And even stuff like on like the business side of things, I'm always like, hey, John, you're doing this great work over here. Do you know Susan over at the Chamber of Commerce? No, I don't. I've been trying to get in there. Hold on, I'll make a quick call. Make a quick call, and then they're like talking. Then I'm on the couch watching TV, and I see John is in the Chamber of Commerce doing a PR piece. I'm like, there we go. That's what I like to see, So I like to be the bridge to help, glue everybody together. Probably a bad way to phrase it, but I like to help people reach their true potential.
What's one piece of advice you would give to someone that's new in this industry or an aspiring developer? What would you tell them?
The biggest thing that I tell people when they're getting into the industry, and excuse my language, but shit doesn't come easy in this field at all. And the reason why I'm so vulgar when it comes to this topic is because there's a lot of people that I have been introduced to that's like, only if I knew, I would have to be constantly learning all the time. I could have changed my mind at the time, but I've already done the boot camp. I've already went to college. I already am this far in. I don't want to turn back, and that's a hard thing, but I'm always telling people like, hey, you're going to have to do long nights of studying, research, just trying to do a lot of soul searching when it comes to like asking yourself, do you really want this every single day? Because you're going to end up looking up one day and you're going to be like, everything's changed. I mean, just think about 10 years ago, Flash devs, they were a thing. Now you probably can't tell me 5 of them, you know what I mean? And the ones who was like, well, I got to continuously learn. They just continuously learned, and now they're doing a React or Angular or like Vue. But the ones who are like, no, I'm just gonna die on this hill. Don't get me wrong, they were getting paid well because there aren't a whole ton of them. But you're now in that one box, and now it's even more difficult to even pivot. So I say it in such a harsh way as, shit doesn't come easy, because I recall going to college, being up until 3 a.m., just trying to learn this algorithm, trying to learn this data structure. Just like, there's been nights that I had to like cry and just ask myself, do I really want this? And even now, I'm still asking myself, like, do you really want this every single day? And it's not because I hate my job, it's just because it's hard as hell, especially the higher up you go. It's a game of how much stuff can you memorize, on top of how well can you replicate a human theory, meaning can you make the computer do what a actual human would do? And that's hard, So just understand and embrace that shit doesn't come easy, but it's way better on the opposite side, because the pay is good, perks are good, people are great. It's definitely worth the pain.
I always say to say that you're going to be a developer is to say that you're going to be on a lifelong journey of learning. Programming is absolutely not easy, but it is absolutely possible. And to me, it's absolutely worth it. Justin Samuels, serial founder, senior software engineer, thank you for doing this with me. I enjoyed every single second of this conversation. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Hey, and thanks a lot for hearing me talk. I probably talked way longer than my time, but I'm always trying to get everything out there that, people ask me about. And just to let everybody know, it's okay if you want to ask me questions on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at the Twitter handle Doug D. Bugger, which is THUGDEBUGGER, or going to my website, dougdebugger.dev, and everything's on there all about me. It's okay if you want to like DM me, hit me up or anything. I'm an open book, and I'll do my best to get back to you all the time.
That'll work. Thank you, sir.
My name is Marcelo Rocha. I am a pre-sales solutions architect. I work for startup companies. More specifically, I've been working with database software for more than 20 years, and I just love the industry, love to meet with customers and prospects and understand what they're doing and how we can use innovative tech solutions to kind of make things better.
So you're definitely a person that I have a lot of interest in, and we've known each other for a little while now. So let's just go back to the beginning. What was life for you before tech?
So my background was actually interesting. I actually went to college and I was planning to be a physicist. I was planning to be an astrophysicist. So I went to college, got into getting my physics degree. And on my first classes of cosmogony, I figured out that any predictions that I would make would take more than 1 billion years for them to happen. And I thought that there was a chance that by 1 billion years from now, people wouldn't remember my name. And even if I got things right, I thought maybe I could do something with more immediate impact. So I did some things with nuclear physics. And that was fun, and that involved a lot of computing, a lot of Pascal and Fortran simulations. And then what I really got into it is when I went to the condensed matter department, we were actually synthesizing liquid crystals, and I built all the equipment. I was already working on a master's degree at that point, built all the equipment to capture and treat the data. And that, of course, kind of led me to kind of learn all sorts of things to kind of how to capture and treat data. So that's where the love affair began.
Okay, so out of everything you could have done, why tech in specific? If in everything that you could have done, why tech in particular? Why not stick to the nuclear physicist train or maybe some other area?
That's interesting. What I love about tech is the number of opportunities and the breadth of opportunities and the fact that those opportunities are everywhere, right? So the types of skills that if you're a very good React developer and tomorrow you want to say, hey, I want to live in Thailand for 2 years, you can go live on a beach, be a React developer in Thailand. There are a lot of occupations where you just can't do that. If you're an excellent lawyer, you're basically tied to that country or that jurisdiction. If you're an excellent medical doctor, even if you're one of the best, you probably don't have a license to be a doctor in other countries, and the process of transferring those things are so the thing about tech is that, number one, there's a huge number of different things you can do and you can learn, so you can actually follow your interests, what interests you. And secondly, those are skills that you can use and apply almost everywhere. So, and the third thing is there's always something new and exciting for you to learn. It's fun.
I always say to be a developer is to be on a lifelong journey of learning. Like, it never stops. There's always something new to pick up and try out. So I do like that. What was one of your hardest challenges coming into tech?
I think for a little while, I think a lot of people may relate to this, right? So I had a science background, right? I was kind of doing liquid crystals on the lab, right? So I'm kind of coming to the corporate world, and people are doing in IT departments, they have a computer science degree and everything. And of course, I was still ramping up my own learning at that point. So you do have sometimes a little bit of imposter syndrome, right? You go in a meeting with someone and they drop 5 acronyms, 4 of which you have no idea what they are.
Yeah.
As you progress in your career, though, is that you wake up every morning, right? And you look at Medium, you look at LinkedIn, you look at Hacker News. And the reality is there's always 5 new things that you wish you knew and seem super cool, but there's only 24 hours in the day. So what I'll say to people is that, number one is never be afraid of if you don't know something, say, hey, I don't know. I mean, if somebody asks you a question and they assume you know the premise of the question and you don't, just be honest. Say, hey, no, I missed that part, or I don't know what you mean by this term. And secondly, that imposter syndrome, if you will, I think there's a lot of people feel the same way, and I've come across people who are just wonderful technologists, some of the smartest people I've ever known, who sometimes have a degree in political science or philosophy or something that is completely not related to tech. So I think as long as you have the drive, right, to learn new things and always be open to learn new things, there's always a possibility. But I think that the biggest obstacle, if you will, are inside of our own minds, that kind of imposter syndrome said, hey, no, you haven't been trained. You're not good enough. You can't do this. And you just need to overcome that.
I had imposter syndrome 5 minutes before this meeting talking to you, man. You know.
So now you don't. You know you don't have to, right?
And now I've calmed down.
I should still be on the lab, dude. Like I'm doing my liquid crystals there and burning my hands.
Yeah. All right. So, very serious question. As a minority, what struggles have you faced or seen in this industry? How have you overcome them, or how do you think we can overcome them?
I think so. I've been blessed by having the opportunity to work for companies who always give me opportunities for growth, and working with people who are smarter and more capable than I am, and consequently giving me incredible opportunities for personal and professional growth. One of the things that I felt that maybe could help, and I think it's our mission, right, us that have achieved something in this industry, is that since there's so many, there's not a lot of diversity in tech right now. I mean, it's growing, but it's certainly not really reflective where the population of the country is. There were few people in positions of leadership that come from a minority background. So it's more of that situation where you say, hey, I mean, I'm mirroring myself, or kind of looking at what that person has achieved and how can I be like him or like her. And a lot of times those examples don't really look like you, or don't have the life experiences that you have, right? So I think that's kind of the biggest struggle, is that you kind of have to find your own path, if you will, because there are not that many examples. On the other hand, I think those of us who are already along that journey, I think it's our duty to extend a hand to the people who are just starting, and kind of lead them and mentor them and coach them, and kind of offer them the type of assistance that sometimes was not available when we started.
Absolutely. What would be a piece of advice that you could give someone to be more welcoming and accepting of a person of color?
I think the main thing is spending time with people. I really do. When I was a teenager, I worked on this small business down in the countryside in Brazil. And I remember my bosses were albino, right? They had absolutely no skin pigmentation, right? And I remember when I went for the first interview and I first saw him, right? I mean, their appearance, I mean, very honestly, it shocked me, right? I mean, I didn't know how to behave. I didn't know what to say. Well, it turns out I started working with him. I started admiring him and liking him, and he became a friend. The pigmentation or lack of pigmentation of his skin, I didn't even see it anymore. It didn't become material. So a lot of times I think the best thing to do is that we human beings, we tend to spend time and kind of put effort with people who share some trait with us. Sometimes that might be generic, might be related. Sometimes is about affinity and interests. Sometimes is political affiliation or religious views. But I think the best thing that every single one of us can do is actually try to spend some time with someone who you feel that is different or have less in common with you. And what you find is actually all of us human beings, we have so much in common, right? Like, just like Bill Gates, one time he was in a meeting with a Bangladeshi woman on her hut with a dirt floor, and they felt that they both shared a passion about making sure that their kids were well taken care of, and they had a connection, right? Two people from completely different places, completely different life stories, but they felt the connection. And I think if you invest the time to get to know people, especially the ones that you don't immediately feel comfortable with, I think that's how you can change things, because that makes people feel welcome, and it makes you appreciate the humanity that exists in every single one of us.
I would say, judging a book by its cover, you're like collecting a lot of books, and that's a very similar circumstance right there. I know you very well, and you come from very humble beginnings, but what is a goal that you have now that you want to try and achieve in tech?
So I am, and I know it's funny to say, right? I mean, probably not to you, but I guess for the public at large, I'm passionate about data and databases, right? I've been doing this my whole life, and I literally love it. I mean, I kind of wake up in the morning, get on my laptop, and I'm excited about the things that I'm going to do and the things I'm going to learn. And one of the things that I intend to kind of do is actually putting more stuff out there in terms of publishing stuff and kind of blogs and tutorials and those types of things that a lot of times are just on the day-to-day job, where you're just solving a problem here and looking at an opportunity there. And there are all those lessons learned, and they just stay on a Google Doc on my account, or they stay in my head, and kind of putting that stuff out there and making it available to others is one of the goals that I think I would like to do.
What would be one piece of advice that you could give to someone new in the industry or trying to make their break into it? What is one thing that you experienced that you would like others to also take value in?
Well, I wouldn't say this is particular to tech. It's something that I work with my kids, for example, is that if you are learning something and you're not struggling, not meaning that you need to struggle 100% of the time, but if you don't come from time to time in a place where it's struggling and frustrating and you have the urge to give up, then I think you're not trying hard enough and not moving at the speed that you can move. The learning process intrinsically is a lot of times a struggle. I mean, sometimes you get to a simple concept, but it takes you more time than you think you should have. And when that struggle, when you feel that frustration, that struggle, saying, man, I can't understand this, or I can't get this to work, two things. Number one, reach out for help. Don't be afraid to admit that you don't know something, even if you feel like you should have. It's even worse if you don't admit it, because it will take you longer to solve the problem. And number two, accept that struggle as a sign that you're growing. I mean, I kind of sometimes even count the number of times I struggle in a week about to learn something. And when I have a week that was really rough and I said, oh man, instead of saying, hey, I came across 30 things that I didn't know this week, oh, I learned 30 new things this week. So it kind of is kind of glass half full, glass half empty. But of course, there's that emotional response that you even feel in your body, right? And that discomfort, that little tug on your heart saying, I can't do this. When you recognize that feeling, just kind of bottle it up and kind of take it as a badge of honor, meaning that, hey, keep trying, keep at it. If you're not struggling, if you're not seeing any obstacles, it just means because you weren't even trying. You're not doing anything interesting.
Marcelo, Pre-Solutions Architect, thank you, sir. I appreciate this, and I enjoyed every second of this.
Thank you. Thank you so much.